about Trenton Road, well, that's also later in the agenda. So this is anything not related to the Chavis track renaming or Trenton. I can't see hands raised, Lindsay. I don't even know where you see that.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. If you click the participants button at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom, participants show up in a panel on the right-hand side. All the hands are lowered now. Okay. Okay. So it sounds like it looks like we probably do not have any general comments at this time. So like I said, we'll move to those other agenda items in a moment, but first we're getting an update tonight from Councilman Buffkin is joining us for an update on some of our bond timing questions. I would just like to say in respect to his time, it's really awesome that he was able to join us tonight, and we're so appreciative of that and his liaison role to the board. He's not able to stay for the whole meeting, of course. He has a lot of meetings to attend. So we put him at the top of the agenda so that he can leave when he needs to. And also, I would just like to be respectful to the fact that, you know, this is really not something that was on our work plan to talk about the timing of the bond, but it's kind of him to come and sort of give the perspective of the city council about this issue because it was something that was raised at the last meeting. Handing it over to you now, Councilman Buffkin.
Well, thanks, Chair Wagner. It's good to be back with you all, and thanks for accommodating my schedule tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't first say, and I said at our council meeting when Jen was there to present the work plan, I really appreciate you all doing this work for the city. It's important work. It takes time away from your life and your family. This last year has been really tough. So thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for all you do for our parks. And I hope you're all looking forward to getting back in person, which will be happening soon. You know, certainly my feeling at the city council that we've really lost a lot, not being able to shake hands, hug, and see each other in person. So I look forward to seeing lots of great work ahead. And I guess probably there's some of you that haven't met in person yet. So I look forward to you making those new relationships and advancing the cause of great parks in Raleigh. So as for the question at hand, Jen and Beverly and I spent some time talking and understand you had some questions about the decision that council has made to set off the parks bond until November of 2022, when all our city elections will be held after the General Assembly passed a bill delaying the elections. So there was a lot of thought and consideration going into the decision and a lot of factors at play. So Beverly and Jen asked that I share some of the thinking around that decision. So glad to do that. And if you have any more detailed questions, glad to answer those. So basically, the view from council was that we were dealing with a tremendous amount of uncertainty about when our elections could be held. And that uncertainty was probably the biggest factor that went into delaying the parks bond. There's some litigation going on that I'm told has the potential to affect when the primary date is going to be in the springtime. So a measure of uncertainty there. And we had a lot of uncertainty about whether we could even meet the procedural requirements for putting a bond on the ballot. The city attorney's office advises us on the procedures we have to follow, and there's about 5 or 6 different council votes that have to happen before and after a bond is put on the ballot. And let's see, is that me? Okay, so there's about 5 or 6 council votes that have to happen to before and after a bond is put on the ballot. And the schedule we're at right now, the point we're at in the calendar is basically we'd have to be ready for our first October meeting to kick that process off, and we're just not there yet. The council has just started on its annual summer break, an important time to rest, relax, and give our staff a break from the crush of work that we have been sending down from the council level. We'll come back in the third week in August, and we still have, in my opinion, probably 2 or 3 months worth of work left to do to figure out what exactly the council wants to have in the bond. So on that schedule, I just don't think we could make the October timeline for those votes. We have the uncertainty about when the primary is going to be. So that was probably the biggest factor. There were some other considerations that went into it. Part of the traditionally anyway, and I think that we would probably pursue a similar track this time. But traditionally, the city has formed a advocacy committee of folks that help go out in the community and help advocate for and pass the bond. I was on that committee in 2014 when we passed the Parks bond. And my experience then was the work started about 10 or 11 months before the election was held. So that's important work. Who's on it and their level of commitment to passing it is I think, an important part of the process. We've also got, our paid professionals that help us out. They're also the same people that traditionally help the school board if they have a bond, and there is something of an open question about whether the school board or ask the county commissioners to put on a bond on the ballot for school construction. And if they do that, there's some uncertainty about, how that bond might affect the Parks bond. So they were seen as some benefit of moving the Parks bond away from the potential timing of a school bond. Of course, there was lots of other factors. And just the fact that city elections are going to be in November was a relevant consideration too. We think there's some benefit in helping the bond's success in having municipal elections at the same time. It tends to focus the voters' attention on local issues. Beverly and Jenna and I also talked about a concern that I understand that is among the board members, and I share the concern, that the basic reality of construction costs are increasing. So how are we going to, use numbers that came, that the numbers that you relied on in making your recommendations to council, need to be updated in light of rising construction costs. I think that's something that's going to be manageable in the final list. Maybe as simple as just adding 8 to 12% to whatever number we come up with to update those numbers and cover that, something of a reserve fund for cost increases. I think that's a solvable problem. We'll deal with that at the council level in due course. Also, I think there's obviously some maybe not concern, but question about what's going to be in the final list. And that's still work that the council needs to do, reach consensus on that. So Jen, I hope I covered everything that the board was interested in hearing about related to the council's decision to put the bond on, or actually it hasn't been made, but in effect, the decision to delay the bond to November. I think these are manageable issues. They're all important considerations. So I hope that helps provide some context. And if you all have any questions, be glad to chat with you a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. I think you hit the highlights there. I appreciate that. Beverly and I met with Councilman Bufkin last week and talked through a lot of these issues and felt really heard, honestly, which was great. And I appreciate that. And also, felt like we all expressed some of our concerns about the parks, and that the parks need the money, and we hate for it to wait, but circumstances being what they are, we understand where council is coming from, and that it's obviously their decision in the end to make on when that timing is and what ultimately is in the bond. Are there any specific questions? I don't want to keep Councilman Bufkin for too long, but if there are any questions.
Yes,
I see
I'm sorry.
A hand from Christina. Yep.
Yes,
I got
yeah,
too many things to look at.
No,
so
of course, not a problem. My question is, after, since I'm new to this bond process, and Councilor Buchan, since you were on this committee when you were on the Parks Bond, what happens after you submit, after what we as a group submitted to you? What is the process that council goes through before placing it on a bond? What are the questions you ask? What are the decisions that you're making? Are you able to speak on any of that?
Sure. So, early on in the process, I think, I hope, reached a common understanding that there were going to be differences of opinion. I don't think they're going to be great. Just my personal forecast, a bit of a guess. I would think that the list that the council approves is going to be 85–90% of what the board has recommended. I think there's wide recognition amongst the council members that it was really well done work, very thorough, attention to equity, investing in parks that had been ignored for too long, providing for a fair spread of the resources across the city. All of those things are factors. Clearly, politics is a factor. Anything is when you're dealing with elected officials. But I think you all have put us in a great position to make a recommendation or to produce a list that we will use in advocating for the bond. And the voters get to decide. They'll be the ultimate decision makers on whether it's the right list and if it's fairly spread about. I think they're going to be there to support us. I think the phase 2 investments for John Chavis, Dix Park, so many of the other projects that are in there are projects the voters want to see get done. And I think broad recognition that you all have done great work. And, the work inside the council now is to give it a final review, make sure that we've hit the marks for equity, make sure that we've got as close to consensus inside the council as we can, and positioned our parks for success in the future to the full extent that we can. So that's an internal council process. It'll be a public process. I'm assuming the manager's office is working on the schedule right now for consideration either at a budget work session or work session for council sometime in the fall or so.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Buffkin while he's here?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Lindsay.
That's okay. So I'm not really sure, that I totally understand why it couldn't happen in March. And I just was wondering if there's any more clarity on that. It just it was so wonderful to be at that dedication ceremony for Chavis just a month ago, but also recognizing that that I think it's my understanding that was the result of the 2014 bond that you worked on, Councilmember Buffkin. So it just was it was a really wonderful occasion, but at the same time, it was also a little disheartening that it took so long for those funds to trickle down, make their way into the places where they needed to be to make those projects come to fruition. So I don't know if there's something else you could explain to help me and us understand that. Just because it's you worked on that one in 2014 that then made Chavis be such a wonderful occasion so 7 years later. And so it just, I'm just a little concerned that these projects that are, whatever these projects are, will also have to wait a really long time. And I know that the Parks Department needs them, the community will enjoy them. And so just wondering if you can shed any more light on that, what could, if there's any possibility or anything about that timing. You follow me, but I'm just I recognize that your hard work brought Chavis and that took a while. So I'm just worried about the next thing taking a while too.
Yeah, well, I should say first, I neither want nor deserve the credit for the 2014 bond passing. There was a lot of people involved. It was a multi-year effort, very similar to what you have gone through. I would say, however, that this round of Parks Bond has been very different. In 2014, the council made just about all of the decisions. This new council came in December of 2019. One of the first things we did was hand over the entire process to the Parks Board. And I think we've hit the gold standard for engagement, transparency, taking public input. And that's, part of the strength of the recommendation that you all have sent us. As far as the timing for March, there's still uncertainty about whether the primary is going to be in March. I don't know what the latest status of that litigation is, but I have been told that there is some thinking out there that the primary may not even happen in March, that it may be pushed back as late as May. So that was certainly a relevant factor. Again, those campaigns take a lot of time and effort, and the timeline between now and March really doesn't set us up for success. The other part of it is, again, related to the timing, is that the procedural votes that it takes to put a bond on the ballot, we're just not going to be in a position to get the process started in time to make our deadlines. So that's a question for the city attorney's office. The state statutes about how you put a bond referendum on the ballot are rather rigid, and there's a vote to declare your intent. There's a vote to approve the ballot language. There's a vote to certify something, or rather, it's 3 or 4 different votes that have to be made by resolution of the council as required by state statutes. And we're just not going to be in a position to get that started when we need it. So, I think everybody shares disappointment, frustration, anxiety over the delay. Because, when I took the oath of office for council, I thought we were going to have a parks bond this past fall. So, we all share that feeling, and a general feeling of amazement, maybe is the most polite way to say how slowly our city government moves, which is not a criticism of our city government. It's a feature of all governments. Things just really don't happen that fast. So, while we the voters approved your 2014 parks bond, we're just spending the last of that money in the 12 months of our fiscal year that begins this month. So bonds were structured, and actually that was intentional. The bond was structured to be rolled out over a 7-year period. That's something you all had looked at, as whether 5 or 7 would be the right number. But it takes time to get the bond on the ballot. It takes time to get a campaign ready to convince the voters to approve it. And then it takes a tremendous amount of time and effort to get the money out the door and the projects on the ground. So I continue to be amazed at how long it takes to get things done. Completely share your feelings. If I thought there was a window to get the bond approved faster, I would certainly be advocating for it. But I think our reality is that November is the earliest we can do it. And I think the council had recognized that, at least implied in the decisions we've made so far.
Thank you for elaborating. It's some more helpful context to understand the process that you have more of a window in and more experience with as well. So appreciate your wisdom in this.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Councilman Buffkin? Beverly, did you have anything that you wanted to add to the conversation? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I did want to just say again, thanks for helping to push through the penny for parks. That's awesome that we got that approved. And also the police unit specifically for the new unit for greenways and parks. That's really great too. So we'll celebrate our victories.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that, Jen. We're, at some point I'm gonna come back for that second penny.
There you go. That's right. We got your back.
Well, I know that, and I appreciate it. Thank you again for the work y'all do. Anytime I can be of help, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.
Sure thing. Have a great meeting.
All right. Have a good night. Next on the agenda, we have an update from the Raleigh Youth Council. Let's see, is Carmen here tonight? There she is.
Hi, I'm here. Unfortunately, Sydney could not make it. She had a work conflict tonight, so I'm just going to give you guys a quick update on her behalf.
Okay.
We are still working through the summer to finalize a work plan with the executive board, and they are going to share that work plan with our Raleigh Youth, with the council, the entire council in August, and then we hope to get you guys that work plan sometime in September. It's like early September. So that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Very good. Thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Did anyone have any questions for Carmen while she's here? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to, now we're in the section for public comments for the Chavis Memorial Park track naming request. So if these are any comments in favor or opposed, this is the time to speak toward that. And I believe you can press the raise your hand button if you're an attendee. And you'll get recognized.
Raise your hand.
And I think, yeah, Mr. Allen, you're in our session of the meeting, so
Yes.
so you can just raise your hand right there, I suppose.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so very much for your interest in the naming of Chavis Park, the track at Chavis Park. I certainly appreciate your input and concern in the least opportunity to sit down for a few minutes and listen to me. As I said in the past, been very active in trying to make that happen. I am still talking to a lot of people, and so far it has been quite positive. And so that's basically what I have to say. It's just that I'm still interested in doing, and like I said, I'm having contact with different people, and they seem to be quite interested in making that happen.
Thank you for your comments.
Sure.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight on the Chavis naming request?
Were those people who were waiting let in? Because I had a call that some people were trying to get in on the phone line.
Were you speaking with me?
No.
No, I was talking
Oh, okay.
Jennifer or Scott or whoever's in charge of that piece.
I see there are quite a few attendees on here that, so I'm not, if you are listening in, I think you can either raise your hand, or if you're calling in, what is the procedure, Giovanna? It's star something?
Star 9 if you're calling it.
Star 9.
Star 9. If you're calling in, press star 9, and that should alert. I believe tonight Mr. Kennedy is helping us out with that.
Mm-hmm.
And while we have a moment here, I would like to go ahead and just say that to remind the board that we did extend this period of time due to hearing some opposition to the naming. And so we are taking a break in August. That was something that was going to come up later in the meeting, but we're taking a break in August. We're not meeting. And in September is when we'll discuss this item as a board. And then in October, we will vote on it.
Okay.
So that's the procedure.
271-8886. If you press star 6, you should unmute.
Yes, I did. This is Herman Hinton.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking about this track over here. I don't think a change need to be made in that because you start a whole lot. I think it needed to stay at Chavis Memorial Park, and then that'll stop a whole lot of confusion.
And I'm sorry, sir, did we get your name at the beginning, Giovanna? Did you catch his name? You did? Okay, very good.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, please continue.
Yeah, I was raised mostly in Chavis Park. I grew up in Chavis Park. We had a lot of track stars that ran at Ligon, and during that time, I think Chavis Park should stay at Chavis Memorial Park. just keep it just like it is, and that'll stop a whole lot of confusion. So you started pulling out names, you're gonna start a whole lot, because we got a lot of track stars could have been there too. So I just think you just need to keep that confusion down and keep it at John Memorial Park, Chavis Park, just like it is.
So just to clarify, this would only would name the track, not the park itself. But
Okay,
that's,
yeah, just the track. Yeah, the track. Just keep the track just like it is.
okay.
Chavis Memorial Park, or whatever they have on that track, like what they have now, just keep it like it is, and keep confusion down.
Okay.
That's my suggestion.
Thank you for your comments.
Right.
Okay, do we have, looks like, there we go, someone else to speak. If you are unmuted, go ahead and introduce yourself.
7239, if you would press *6, you will unmute.
My name is Mary Brooks.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. And I would like to express my concern about the track. And I think we should leave it like it is. You don't need to put nobody's name on it. Just leave everything like it is so we can not start confusion. And plus, we did not have a track back then for Mr. White to run. They did the running over at State College. So we need to leave things like it we used to have. It was just a football stadium. And we did not have no track to name nobody's name after. And we need to leave it for the community as everything for Chavis Park, everything for Chavis track. We need to leave it just like it is. And I have been talking to a lot of folks, and they would like for it, and they have expressed their concern with you about it. So please take that in consideration, that we as community would like to leave everything like it is, please. And I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your input. And then I believe we may have one more person who wishes to speak. So again, just press *6 and introduce yourself.
I believe it's the phone number that ends in 6371.
Good evening. This is Lynette Williams. Am I unmuted?
We hear you. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you. I have been talking with a lot of my classmates. We are all classmates of Pat White, a person we love dearly and still feel the pain of his loss so early in his life. But we feel like to add more pressure to what we already have with completing the park and all, we don't need to start separating portions of the park out and naming other people that we lose the whole purpose of coming together to complete the total renovation of the park, rather than to start separating parts and naming it for individuals who may have been a part of our lives when we were in school. As Mary said, we didn't have a track over at Chavis when we were in school. I asked the Parks Department to find out for us when the track was installed, and it wasn't installed until 1977. And we left Ligon in 1964. So we had no connection other than for football at that location. So there is no direct relationship between the outstanding accomplishments that Pat and other athletes had to that track that's at Chavis now. I think there are other ways of recognizing and memorializing people who had a substantial relationship to the park, and we hope we can do that with our legacy and heritage portion of the work that we're continuing to do at Chavis. So just passing on what I've been hearing from the community, being a member of the class of 1964 Ligon, we have had numerous phone calls amongst to see what would be the best thing and the best interest for the community. So thank you for listening to me. Good night.
Thank you for calling in and for your comments. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the naming request for the Chavis track? I'm not seeing any more at this time. Members of the board, did you have any questions for any of the callers? They may not be on anymore, but or maybe questions for staff that may have come up? No. Okay. And like I said, at our next meeting in September, we will have an opportunity to discuss this more as a board. Yes, Beverly, go ahead.
Ms. Williams mentioned the chronology of the creation of the track, and I was wondering if staff could, not tonight, but perhaps in a memo to us, forward to us the chronology of the development of the facility, so that we have those data points. Thank you.
Yep, very good. I agree. That'd be helpful. Good. Okay. Well, we're going to move on then to our next item on the agenda. Mr. Allen, thank you for coming to speak tonight. The next item is the Trenton Road Connector project. If there, we're going to have a presentation on this. And then at this time, I believe we can also, yes, receive public comments. So after the presentation, we'll open it up for public comments. Mr. Bender, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, Director Carmona, Assistant Director Payne, and also all of the attendees that have taken the time this evening to join us to share their comments and feedback on this project. I am going to share my screen with this presentation and want to make sure that you see that PowerPoint?
Not yet, David.
It shows your name.
Not yet.
Nothing yet?
Nothing yet. I will use this moment to say to members of the board that I'm delighted that we'll be back in person in September, which I think will help with a lot of our technical issues that we've experienced over the past year.
Richard, do you need to give David any sharing screen rights? I'm not sure if David would have those rights or not.
Should have those rights. I should just be able to use the share screen option at the bottom.
David, this is Lisa. I can try and open the PowerPoint and share it on my end. I don't know. That would help.
Yeah, that's
okay, David, we're starting to see some progress. There we go. You got it
It's
up.
there.
We see it. Great.
Yay. All right, thank you very much. All right, so good evening. I'm David Bender. I am the project manager with Parks and Rec Planning and Communication Division. And I'm going to present to you some current design ideas of where we are on the Trenton Road Connector project. So if you're not familiar with the location, you'll see in this red square that Trenton Road, which is adjacent to the entrance to Umstead Park, between Reedy Creek Road and the I-40, next to the Reedy Creek Trail. And it's also, you can kind of see its ties to Reedy Creek, which leads up to North Carolina Museum of Art. So this next picture gives you a little bit more detail on the project location map. The center red line is Trenton Road, which shows you the area of improvement that we're evaluating. The arrows that you see are 3 proposed high visibility pedestrian crossings that we are also including in this project. And again, you can see we're start right at the entrance, access to Umstead Park, and ties right into Reedy Creek Road. And please, if you have any questions, just stop me anytime. I've also identified all of the subdivisions that are directly located adjacent to this project area. So a little background on the project. Back in 19, we had an initial feasibility study, and the goal of that was to create a facility where we had minimal property acquisition, where we stayed away from utilities, and we wanted to be environmentally responsible. The result of that project was to identify a 5-foot sidewalk that was to be located adjacent to the right-of-way line. This is behind the existing ditch. There is a really high community demand for this project. This was very strongly supported during the original bond, and that community participation and interest still is very active in this project. So last year, we wanted to take this project a step further, and we brought in another design firm, and they came up with the concept of creating what we're calling as a like with like. That means that we want to create something that's similar, that's along Reedy Creek Road, a side path with some type of vertical separation, and it would be able to be wide enough to support both bicycle, pedestrian, safe travel. So it would be consistent with it. Some really good strategic benefits to the concept is that this location is a connection of the future Triangle Bikeway path that'll be along I-40. This will be a direct link according to draft plans of that project. And also strategic wise, our bike Raleigh plan recommends a separated bikeway in this area, and the comp plan also recommended side trail. And this is a sensitive area parkway, which is very important. We wanted to minimize curb and gutter and create it. It also requires a multi-use trail. So there are some physical and strategic issues that really are driving a lot of this design and ideas. You can see this was a bond project initially for $1 million, and our current budget, less design, is just under $800,000, and we're hoping to go to construction later this summer. So here's just a couple pictures that, if you're not familiar with Trenton Road, you'll see that it is a 2-lane roadway with a wide paved shoulder and a ditch for drainage. You'll see that there are some mailboxes that are directly accessed on Reedy Creek Road. And another critical issue that you'll see is that there is a lot of vegetation that has been growing within the existing right-of-way. So it's going to be some of the impact in what happens in this project. And you can also see an effort to try to minimize impacting a lot of this vegetation by staying away from that right-of-way line. So the rendering picture that you see here is the concept which we have been able to take to a 60% design. the main goals of this concept, or the main issues to ensure that this works, is that we need to make sure that our drainage is consistent to what it is today, and that this is an NCDOT roadway, and they are going to be very very closely watching and evaluating, make sure that our final calculations with this design is not going to create any additional water runoff than what is currently going on. Again, I mentioned that we wanted to minimize our utility conflicts. There's a lot of communication and gas utilities located in this. As I mentioned, this is an NCDOT maintained road. They have given us a preliminary okay, a thumbs up to this concept that we're proposing. We want to provide some kind of physical barrier that's going to separate the trail from the traffic. And what you see here is going to be an 18-inch wide raised concrete median. And that is going to be able to provide that separation. You're also seeing a wide paved surface, 10-foot wide, and we're also incorporating this new shared path painted symbol on this that we're also looking at using in some of the other projects. So this concept, the estimated construction cost, excluding 10% contingency and any acquisition, is within our budget. It's under $800,000. It does fit within our current budget, which is a good thing. And we're currently not anticipating acquisition, but we'll know more about that. Here you're seeing more design details that show the edge of pavement on Trenton Road. This line here shows you which is going to be the 18-inch raised median, and then the 10-foot wide paved side path. And you can see the distance that we're trying to stay away from the property line. So when we were trying to come up with an idea and a concept of what is the best concept that we can put in here that's the safest, that provides the best use for this area, and we came up with this cast in place median concept. And what you see here is a picture of Johnston, Iowa. This is a recent project which they constructed. And some advantages to creating this type of raised median is that really it's a simple construction. Any contractor can do it. It's relatively inexpensive. There's not any proprietary designs or improvements that we're proposing here. We are not currently proposing those vertical white bollards. However, we may want to include those bollards at the ends, as you see here at the end of this median. And that's really just to give drivers a better heads up that there is a curb here. Some of the issues that we're facing, and that we are working very closely with all of the, if we are not now, we will be working very closely with the property owners. It does require some saw cutting of the concrete. There are some coordination with post boxes as well as with the waste management. And those are some of the things that we are implementing in our design. Some more pictures kind of shows you how some of these driveway intersections are going to be constructed. This photo here is a good example of what is very possible, what we're going to create, showing that bollard right at the end, and the wide access that this is providing, the wide turning radius that this is providing. This total crossing treatments, there's going to be 2 T intersections. We found that there are 5 direct driveways connecting to Trenton Road, which will be affected and have this type of treatment. And there are also 4 mailboxes that are served by the Postal Service that we need to continue coordinating with the postmaster And then there are also garbage facilities that we'll need to coordinate. So all things that we are nearing the point in design that are part of what our process is coordinating with the property owners, coordinating with the utilities that are in this area. So just a little background on what some of the activities that have occurred throughout this process, beginning in 2020, when we were having some of the initial Parks Bond meetings. We took advantage of that and had opportunities to meet with property owners. In May, early May, we put out a pre-recorded presentation out on the website. We had over 600 views on that presentation. We also included links to a survey that gave opportunities for the public to give questions and comments. We had over 72 questions in the public comments. So on May 11th, we opened up a virtual live public open house, similar to this, a Zoom webinar. And we gave the public the opportunity to ask those questions. And we were able to discuss a lot of the comments that went on. We posted the sign, we sent letters, we put notices out on social, we updated the website, similar to what we've done here for the July 15th meeting, and also providing that information. We'll be going to the city council meeting August 17th for a public meeting. So we have made done our due diligence in getting this out to the public, so it's given a lot of opportunities for the public to provide some feedback, as well as what they're going to have opportunity this evening. So some of the design resolutions that we have tried to come up with the property owners, we wanted to construct a 10-foot facility, and we wanted to resolve some of the following request changes. Now, it's important to note that anything that we design or propose along this roadway is pending approval by NCDOT. They are the final authorization for anything. And an example is we are replacing the white flexible vertical bollards. We're putting in the cast in place median, adding tint to the cast in place median to match existing concrete that's up Reedy Creek Road. We're including high visibility pedestrian crossings at 3 intersections. And we've designed this 10-foot trail to minimize the impact on vegetation and utilities located in the right of way. Again, these are all the design features that we think are possible and doable in this design. Again, it is really pending NCDOT, their approval. Some of the coordination, we've been coordinating with the Division 5. We've coordinated with the departments of engineering, urban forestry, transportation, all of the departments that are that have an interest in this project. And we've coordinated with the Trenton Road neighborhood throughout this design process. Project timeline, again, shows you in early May when we did the pre-recorded presentation. We had a live virtual open house in May. We're looking at bidding this project later in the fall, starting construction in early 22. That's like a January, February date, and then completing the project within a 6-month construction period, sometime around June, July of 2022. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
And I'm trying to find the share.
Thank you for that presentation, David. I had one quick question, if I could, about the 5 driveway crossings that you mentioned. Will there be any markings for pedestrians there to sort of say, hey, heads up, there's a potential for a conflict here with cars?
There. Okay, I heard you. I'm just making sure the screen is off, right?
It is.
Okay. Yes, we're going to be creating 3 high visibility pedestrian crossings, the standard DOT approved infrastructure. As far as any kind of electronic, power-oriented warning features. Those have not been authorized by NCDOT at this point, but we will be putting crossings, access curb cuts, and just like any other crossing that we would construct within the city of Raleigh.
Okay, so there will be, even across the private driveways, there will be some indication that that's a driveway that they're biking or running across.
We're not providing crossings for all of the driveways. That would create, that would be an excessive number of crossing opportunities across traffic. We will be providing these crossings at 3 intersections located across, located along Trenton Road and up Reedy Creek Road.
Okay. And then a follow-up to that is, you mentioned that the bollards may not be included, but except at the ends of the curb. I'm wondering if there could be some sort of reflectors or something that are placed on the curb occasionally, just to, again, at night, give an indicator to cars that there's a curb there.
And we've considered that. It didn't make it into our pictures or our renderings, but it is, that will be a feature that you could expect that we would want to put there. And again, any of these improvements are, hopefully DOT is going to be okay with it. They're not significant cost expenses to us. It's really just making sure that we meet all of the typical highway construction standards that DOT wants.
Great, thank you. Do any other members of the board have any questions before we open it up? Beverly, go ahead.
David, I wanted to follow up with Jennifer's question, because I think she perhaps more specifically was asking about a way to mark the driveway, so that if you're using the 10-foot passageway, that as a walker or a cyclist that you're coming to a driveway, so that you have an additional visual mind, whether it's just.
And I think the difference here is that the path is asphalt, just like the road and just like the driveways. So there's no visual cue that there's a difference.
A very typical improvement that is used for this type of feature are putting hash marks across the driveway. Often they're white thermoplastic hash marks, and they can also be green. Those details haven't been worked out, but that is typically what we will put on any driveway crossing.
Great. That's what we were focused on. Thank you.
Sure.
This is Lisa Schiffbauer from Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources. I just wanted to add, the level of information that's being shared tonight isn't typically the level of design that we share. We're sharing a lot more than like a schematic design. So you're actually seeing more details in this design than you would in like a schematic design. And, that's obviously for everybody on this call's benefit. As we get closer, as we move along in the design, we're going to finalize those details.
Sure. Thanks. Any other questions from the board? Okay, well, at this time, we'll open it up for any public comment. And as a reminder, I neglected to mention earlier that comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and be sure to state your name at the beginning. Let's see. Okay, I see several hands raised. And I believe Richard will unmute you one at a time.
Oh, Tommy, you should be able to unmute.
Looks like Tommy Oates, you should be able to unmute. It looks like he may have disappeared. Okay. We move to the next person.
Tommy Oates is still there, Jen.
Yeah, he just came back or shifted. Okay. So.
They're shifting.
Mark, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening. Do you want me to go ahead? This is Mark Paterni.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I live at 3317 Roller Mill Court. My property backs up to Trenton Road. I 100% support this project and have been interested since I moved in 2013 and first learned of the possibility. We've been waiting for this for a long time and have been trying to support it. There's a significant safety need for this project as traffic volume has increased on Trenton Road and Reedy Creek Road, and it's only going to increase with the further development that's happening near Edwards Mill Road and Blue Ridge Road. This is a heavily used recreational corridor. I agree with what I've heard from Parks and Recreation that this is an important connection that will eventually connect all the way into Cary. I know that the town of Cary has had longstanding plans to build a section of Greenway that would connect this road, this pathway into Cary proper. They have not funded that yet, but it is planned. And it will also connect, of course, with the Route 40 bikeway. But more importantly to me personally is the need for safety as I walk along Trenton Road to get down to the Reedy Creek Greenway and to Olmsted State Park. Again, the amount of traffic and at times the speed of some of that traffic creates a danger. There are increasing numbers of young families that live here, and you see them out with strollers and children. I support the 10-foot, 8-foot, or 5-foot pathway. I think 10 makes the most sense from a connectivity point of view and to address the volume of use that we are currently seeing. But I understand the challenges of engineering and drainage that have to be met. During the 25% design presentation, there were a lot of questions from the community. There was a lot of opposition to the bollards, and the city is being responsive, and I appreciate that. But there are still a lot of questions, particularly amongst those who live adjacent to the path. There's a lot of concern about the potential for damage to foliage and trees that are on private property. There's some 40 and 50-foot pines, there's some old growth that if they die as a result of construction could create significant costs for homeowners. And that shouldn't be the case in my personal opinion. So we'd like to see some addressing of that. And I know the city's trying very hard to stay away from the property line, but looking at it physically and with the drainage work that's going to have to be done, I still have serious concerns and questions. So we're anxious for the personal meetings with the property owners so they can get their specific concerns addressed and can understand better what's coming. Again, I'd like to thank the city, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources for all the work they're doing on this project. It's a long time coming. It is sorely needed, and we will appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So just to clarify, I believe that Richard Kennedy will be unmuting each of you one at a time. And so he'll let you know when you can unmute. So you may not be able to see the unmute button until that happens. So who's up next, Mr. Kennedy?
Tommy Oates, if you would be, should be able to unmute now.
Great.
I think I have. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for the time. I think Mark addressed the overall safety concerns pretty well. I live at 3317 Trenton Road, almost directly across from one of the 25-mile-an-hour signs asking people to slow down as they're coming from Cary or Sass. I am glad to see that the reflectors, vertical pieces on the median have been removed except for at where a driveway would be. And to me, that would give notice that one is coming up, as opposed to them being every however many feet they were in the picture we had seen before. We do have some concerns about drainage being able to, without extra pipes, crossing the road and taking it to the other side from the new Greenway, maybe causing some problems, but I'm sure your engineers will figure that out. One of the big concerns we have is that several of the neighborhoods on this side of Trenton Road, Trenton Place and the one next to 40, have pump stations at the bottom of their neighborhoods, which take the sewer into the city system. Our neighborhood does not, Trinity Farms. However, since I live on the Trenton Road and several other people impacted do, we are wondering if it's possible at appropriate spots to go ahead and bring a tie-in for sewer across, not to have a continuous line, but at least several spots without having to create traffic control and dig holes across Trenton Road. In the future, we'd be able to tie in. Other than that, I'm really pleased with having this path on our road and looking forward to using it in the future.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, this is James. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
go
great.
ahead.
Yeah, this is James Idamarco. Hey, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thanks, Mr. Bender, for the presentation. I think, again, it sounds like a few of the things that were voiced, have been heard. I'd like to make one comment or two about Trenton Place. So I own, my property line's about 300 feet personally along Trenton Road. Trenton Place is the subdivision that's probably almost as close to Umstead Park as some of the others. I think, to build on Jennifer Wagner's questioning earlier, there's not a crosswalk plan for our subdivision, which is probably appropriate, but we originally were in favor of the 5 feet, or the majority of us. Now that it's 10, we suspect there's going to be more bicycle traffic, more pedestrian traffic. And so when traffic is heavy in the mornings and the afternoon, our 17 homeowners are concerned, how can we safely enter and exit? So I would like to throw that back on the design table, even if there's not a crosswalk design, how can we properly enter and exit in a safe manner? So that's one point that I wanted to make. The other one, and it's already been made, but just to emphasize it, now that it is going to be 10 feet, and, we appreciate you trying to stay away from our property lines. For me personally, it'll be about 4 feet up to my property line, and there's 6 or 7 pretty big trees there that I would like somebody to reach out to me sooner than later. I've held off for a year now, debating whether we should put a fence up for more privacy. Clearly, we're concerned with, people being that close to our house. And there's some other things that we had planned for that area. So I guess the sooner I understand, what you would be doing with the individual homeowners, then the better we can kind of deal with it. So again, thanks to everybody, and appreciate the few minutes to voice our opinion.
Great. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right. This is Jeannie Safrit, and I live in the Trinity Farm subdivision, which exits right onto Trenton Road. And first of all, as has been mentioned, I certainly appreciate the path going in. We have had safety issues, extreme safety issues on Trenton Road for years. And I think this path is really going to improve those. I also very much appreciate that you are including the 3 crosswalks, because again, that is really going to help make the area safer. On a related note, I have 2 safety concerns, And one, fortunately, Jennifer and Beverly, you have already mentioned, Trenton is different from Reedy Creek. It has actually 3 subdivisions that are going to cross the Greenway, and I believe there are more than 5 driveways. So that is going to be potentially a very dangerous situation. As you all have noted, we're going to have cars trying to cross and folks coming down the Greenway that have the illusion that they are safe because they are on a Greenway. They are not on the road, and they will have no indication that they are about potentially to come into a car. So David, I know you mentioned the hash marks. If that can be part of the design, that would be absolutely fabulous. I think there is something has to indicate that we're going to have cars and people and bikes interacting. So I very much would appreciate if that goes in. Another safety issue is I believe the median currently is a vertical side. It is not slanted like the calming measures on Reedy Creek are done. And that is if that's the case, that's a potential safety issue, because when a car hits the median, and we know they will, then that's going to be quite damaging on their tires. So if it's possible to change the design so the sides of the median are rounded, that would be really helpful. From an aesthetic standpoint, I very much appreciate that you're going to tent the median. That is a request the neighbors made, and I definitely appreciate that. Also, eliminating the bollards is wonderful because nobody likes the bollards. They're so urban looking. They do not fit in our neighborhood. If there is a need to put bollards at the ends, like you've mentioned, if it's possible to tent them instead of have them be white, maybe have them match the median, we would certainly definitely appreciate that. And thank you for the opportunity to talk. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Looks like we still have, I believe, 3 more people to speak.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair and Director Carmona, members of the Park Board. It is a privilege to be with all of you and to see so many familiar faces. My name is Nick Neptune. I am calling in this evening as the chair and president of Oaks and Spokes, the local Raleigh-based advocacy organization for a more sustainable and equitable transportation model. Oaks and Spokes would like to provide strong support for the Trenton Road Connector project, which will provide a critical all ages and abilities link within our transportation system. Specifically, we feel both the physical separation from traffic and the bi-directional nature of the project allows for a more joyful and desirable riding experience, which encourages a parent and a child, or grandparent and a child, to travel side by side safely and effortlessly. Given this corridor's close proximity to Umstead State Park and the Reedy Creek Greenway, as well as the proposed Triangle Bikeway, this project provides continued investment in our community to allow for a better transportation model. Per feedback from the neighborhood and given design guidelines for this road type nationally, we also feel that where appropriate, the vertical bollard separation can be omitted. The horizontal raised buffer, however, provides critical protection for people from traffic, and we would advise that horizontal separation remain in place along the entire project corridor as currently designed. Given the bidirectional nature of the bike path, we also feel that intersections need to be properly marked and signed to minimize conflict and ensure safe passage for all modes. We thank you again for consideration of our comments on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Neptune, for your comments.
I'm Dr. Jean Spooner. First, on my Umstead Coalition Chair hat, I would like to thank the previous and the current council for their support of this project in the bond package. We tried several bonds, so I'm glad we got it into this bond and the staff to move forward with this project. As a resident of this corridor on Trenton Road. Excuse me, still in the MSED Coalition hat. As of this morning, the park superintendent had yet not been contacted. And as in the Crabtree Creek project, how we connect to Umstead State Park via the Reedy Creek Greenway has some improvement potential. And of course, this one coming in. So I think close coordination of how that transition is made, type of from pavement to gravel to transition for erosion control and also for signage. The City of Raleigh's sign there was kind of like plopped in there. It's incorrect. And it's also not park-like. So I think there's the signage at that entrance needs to be highly coordinated and needs to be part of the cost of the project. Now, onto my landowner. Yes, totally support the project. First of all, it is, it's not, as mentioned before, there's a lot of trees that are out of that are in the lots behind the property corners that I do believe will be impacted. And they're mature trees, so we'll be impacting their roots and they're going to die. And there's some very tall trees. It'll be a hazard to the road, the pedestrians, etc. And we all have good ideas for proactive tree removal and tree replanting. And so it's not just the trees that may or may not be in the right of way now, it is the trees in the private land that are going to be impacted, I believe. We'll see when we see the final width. But for example, I only have 28 feet between my property corner and the center of Trenton Road because Trenton Road appears to be shifted off center from its right of way. So there's just some issues, but perfectly happy to work with the city, but the city does need to work with each of us. Totally support the 3 crosswalks. Totally support the sharrows. They have not yet been mentioned, but they were during the public meeting and the staff indicated their support, and DOT perhaps share their support for the sharrows. I think we now have a lot of fast bikes on Trenton Road. It's a very popular bike corridor now. And I think that's a good place for the fast bikes to go. I would like to emphasize that the vertical concrete barrier may be a safety issue, however, not only for the cars, but for bikes that might need some quick escape. Popular to what it used to be, Trenton Road is quite popular now with cars as well as bicycles. We have one of the main entrances to SAS here and a lot of other increased developments such as broadband, et cetera, and some other state buildings coming online. So I think sharrows, a safe way for bicycles to escape with impatient cars behind. And also I would strongly support a 4-way stop at Trinity Road and Silent Stream Court. I think just a crosswalk is not going to be sufficient to slow this competing traffic at that intersection. And I would support a continued 25 miles to Trenton Road, from Trenton Road to I-40 Bridge, the sharrows I just mentioned, and restoring the stop sign that we used to have at Reedy Creek Road and Trenton Road at Umstead State Park. I think that would improve the safety down at that corner for all bimodal and the homeowners that are down there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Looks like one more person. Paige, are you there? Her hand was up, but it's not any longer. Okay. Do you still wish to speak, or are we? Sorry, cannot unmute. Okay. So it looks like she is still trying to speak.
Paige, can you raise your hand? Okay, you should be able to
Okay,
cut
sorry.
that.
I think, can you hear me now? I'm so sorry.
Yes, yes, we can. Go ahead. And
Oh
if you
my
could
gosh.
just give your last name, please.
Sure. The last name is Cock. I live in Trenton Point, and it was earlier referred to as the community nearest 40. I echo some of the safety concerns that were expressed by previous homeowners. I have just a couple of follow-up questions as well. If this has been addressed, I apologize. I have not seen any on any plans the widening of the Greenway that's currently in front of our community between Windy Woods Way and I-40. If I had to guess right now, the path that's currently there is 6 to 8 feet wide. So that's one question. The second thing I wanted to bring up is parking. So even today, we've had people parking on both sides of the entrance of our community, as well as across the street in front of the state-owned land to access both the bike trail that's in the state-owned land and to get to this path that's currently there and then to walk to the entrance of Umstead. So I would like to see some, plans for either expansion of the, if there is such something in place to do that, the widening of the path that's in front of our community. With that, I wanted to just make sure it was mentioned that we do have our own stormwater system. So any disturbance of property on the path to Trenton Road, I would like to express concern about any runoff, drainage, et cetera, things like that. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Bender, would you like to respond to her question about the widening of the path from Windy Woods Way to I-40?
That existing asphalt path will be replaced with the 10-foot wide side path with raised median.
Okay, so that is part of the project.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we are done with our public comment period. There's none other at this time. So my understanding now, this wasn't in the action items for the agenda, but I think we actually do need to take an action here to send it on to City Council for their review. And so what we would be doing is just saying that we do recommend that it go to City Council for their review and approval. We can do that with some caveats or additions based upon some of the things we've heard or what we think should be added. Is there any discussion or comments on that?
If I may.
Yes, go ahead, Lex.
I mean, I would consider, in addition to just sending it on saying we want City Council to review it, I would be open to considering us adding the caveat that we support the project. Sounds like it's a good project, and the folks that have spoken from around the area seem to support it, with, of course, some concerns that will always be raised and some things that I think can be addressed in the design and construction. But I would be open to, if other board members were adding the caveat when we send it, that we support the project.
Would there be anything else at this time that, we feel should be emphasized or added? Or we could say that we'd like to make sure that staff considers the comments that we heard tonight and takes that into consideration as they're working through the design and speak to homeowners.
Yeah, and definitely continue garnering the input of the folks that live right there.
Mm-hmm. Beverly, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, but Oscar does.
Okay.
That's
Yep.
what I was pointing to.
I had that window covered again. Go ahead, Oscar.
Yes, thank you. I did want to point out that as our project team continues to work on this project, they are going to be working with the adjacent communities through the rest of the design process. So engagement is still going to be happening. This is by no means going to be the end of it, the end result. So to address any concerns, there is going to be continued discussions, continued design processes are going to be looked at to make sure that every single concern that the neighbors bring up is addressed through the design process.
Go ahead, Beverly. Yep.
Well, as somebody who does use Trenton Road on her bicycle frequently, I don't recall when there was a stop sign at Reedy Creek in Trenton, but that would be the way cars whip around that corner. I know that's not Parks and Recs jurisdiction, that's traffic and DOT. I don't know whether it's possible, but I certainly agreed with Dr. Spooner that that might be something that would help slow things down along there. But otherwise, I really want to commend staff for, when we first heard about this project a year, 18 months ago, it was going to be a 5-foot pathway. And they continued to work on the design and look at alternative ways of addressing it. And even if it were a totally separate up against the property line Greenway, it would still have driveway cross. It's not a typical wouldn't be a typical Greenway even then. So the challenges would still be there, but I'm really thrilled that they have put their heads together so many times and come up with a solution that allows it to be 10 feet wide, because I think strollers and pedestrians and cyclists will all be able to coexist much better, much more safely with that. So thank you.
Great, thanks for the comments. Any other thoughts, comments before we take a vote? Anyone want to make a motion? Lex?
I move that we send the project to council for their review.
Second.
Great. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Great, the motion passes. Thanks, everybody. I would just encourage, Mr. Bender and staff to, really look into some of these things that were brought up as we were talking through it, some of the safety measures, which I'm sure you will, and look forward to seeing the further design.
Thank you, board members. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Western Boulevard Corridor Study. This is involving the bus rapid transit. Hi there. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Once again, And thank you to the board members for having us on the agenda. We really appreciate this opportunity. So I'm here on behalf of our, project team. My name is Dania Sandeep. I work with the Urban Design Center. We're part of the Planning and Development Department. What I'm going to do is give a quick overview of the project. I'm not going to go into the details because, we have a full-fledged report, which I hope you've had a chance to at least skim to, but just, talk in general about what to expect, because there's a lot of emphasis on public right-of-way, parks, open space, and opportunities for Greenway connections. That's my goal. But again, it was a collaborative project. We really work closely with the Parks Dick's team, the Parks Planning Group, as well as the Greenways team. So it's again, the whole collaboration. What you see is some of those recommendations. So I do have a PowerPoint, and I'm going to try sharing that. Hopefully, I'm not going to run into issues, but just give me a second while I share my screen.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to follow up on Lindsay's comment in the chat just to say, yeah, if we can all as board members try to keep our cameras on as much as we can. If you need to take a break and step away, that's fine. But when you're sitting there, except I guess during presentations, it's best to keep it on so that everyone knows that we're present. And I also, before the presentation started, we said hi to Mr. Etheridge, but I neglected to officially welcome him to the board. So Mr. Gregory Etheridge is here with us tonight as a new board member, and we will speak with him more later, but welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Sandeep, it's yours again. Sorry about that.
Were you able to see my screen?
Yes, we sure are.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I know the Zoom works a little different from the other modes. So yeah, let me go back and get to that. Okay. All right. So again, this is the Western Boulevard Corridor Study. So on this map, you're looking at the project area extent. So quick emphasis, this is around the planning opportunities to shape and leverage, the upcoming bus rapid transit, which everyone is probably aware of. And we are focused on the western leg of the BRT corridor. So this is actually a pre-planning in light of the upcoming investment. So the area that we're looking at is from downtown Raleigh, going all the way to town of Cary. But for the emphasis of the land use and planning analysis, we actually looked at the area on the map that you see. And those little dots are the proposed BRT stations. And we actually looked at the extents within, city of Raleigh. So we're looking all the way to 40. We also included about half-mile buffer, which we consider as 10-minute walk radius. And so that's kind of our project limits. One thing I want to note here, we did have different alternatives that, through this planning process, we ended up making a key decision on what we call the locally preferred alternative, which is, the exact route to how BRT will connect downtown Raleigh and Cary. And we used to have 3 different alternatives from Jones Franklin on, and the one you see on this map is the one that was selected by both Raleigh Council as well as Town of Cary Council. And it is going to be going through a new proposed street that you see on dashed line that will, which we call the Western Boulevard Extension, and that will connect to the existing Cary Town Boulevard, and then again, go back into Town of Cary, up Maynard, and back into downtown Cary. The scope of the study, we had 3 major categories. In the first is a land use and market analysis that was looking mostly at the development potential presented by the transit-oriented opportunities. It was consultant-led. We do have a report that was produced by the WSP team. And then the locally preferred alternative, that again was a lot of technical analysis, which the consultant team led as well. And the preferred alternative was endorsed in August of 2020. And the last section, which is the open design opportunities, that's the one I'm going to talk a little more today. We looked at, this was scoped in-house by the Open Design Center team. We looked at physical improvements and again, the focus on public realm and opportunities around that. So you hear a lot about that, and the report is, has a lot of focus on this category. So quick timeline, we kicked off this process in late fall of 2019. We had a great in-person meeting, several pop-up meetings and sessions, and engaged a lot of community. And then as we were getting geared up for a session in summer of 2020, we were hit by the pandemic. So we did have to slide down and change our strategy. So we had a virtual engagement process in fall of 2020 that was actually well attended. We got a lot of great comments and feedback. And so we just released the report almost a month and a half ago, which is the final report. We took a lot of public comments, and now we get hoping to wrap up and take forward to Council and Planning Commission review in fall, most likely in September and after. So quick note, the design phase that I want to point out is the actual design of the BRT, how the street cross section, what is the running way of the transit, bus transit lane only, and also the station locations. All of those would be confirmed by the design phase that's just kicked off, which the city's transit division is managing. And so the 5% design process has kicked off, and that's where you would get more details. So what we're looking still is the planning and opportunities to leverage on the BRT process. We took a lot of public comments, and just wanted to highlight. So the top priority that we heard from the community is, pedestrian bicycle connectivity was really important. And people talked about how it's a great road. It carries a lot of vehicles and cars, but it's really bad in terms of infrastructure for pedestrians and bicyclists. So that was the top priority, and improving certain intersections, which we felt was important. And folks pointed out, this is a map where many of those comments were highlighted. And the transit supportive development, and folks understand that it is important to think about density and how future growth can be accommodated along these corridors. So there's understanding that we do need to think about density and finding appropriate nodes for that, so you can accommodate future needs, affordable needs, as well as the growth capacity that we need to be planning for. And last but not least, folks talked about how important it is to be looking at sustainable design practices, both in the design of roadway, the BRT system, but also planning for that growth in a sustainable manner. So the design scope we looked at is really looking at opportunities and how we can transform the nature, the current autocentric nature of Western, into a more safer, well-connected, again, serving multimodal users and creating walkable environment, at the same time being sustainable, and like the best transit corridor of the future. So that's kind of the vision we started off with. So we looked at the entire corridor and split it up in what we call character zones. So there's about 6 character zones, and this really ties into the predominant character that's existing now, as well as some of the limiting factors, but looking at what opportunities we could based on the existing context. So you can see we have downtown, if it's more of an urban nature, closer to downtown, and then as you move away, you have a significant frontage in the park area, Dix Park, and then moving to the campus with NC State, and then we have the Method Kent commercial, which is a little more of the commercial strip of the corridor, and then we come into this multimodal where a lot of transition is happening right after Blue Ridge Road, and then of course the new Cary connector, which would have new opportunities now that is being identified as a transit route. So we considered all of that, and so the themes under which the recommendations fall in, really multimodal connectivity. That's because, again, from the feedback we received from the community. So we look at a lot of ways to improve this. So we look at new street connections. We are proposing new bicycle networks, facilities. We're looking at also Greenway connections, and overall, intersections that could help with all of this interconnectivity. a large emphasis on public realm, and I'm sure this group is always interested in that. It's just enhancing the quality of available existing right of way and those spaces, also connecting to existing parks and greenway systems, and kind of making that seamless connection. Because we talked a lot about how even if you're a transit user, at some point between, you are going to be a pedestrian walking from point A to B to catch a bus, or even get to a bike. So the quality of public realm is really important. And so we found ways looking at how we can enhance that experience, adding pedestrian amenities to the existing corridor. Again, sustainability, environmental sustainability. So we do look at opportunities for integrating green infrastructure, looking at more sustainable practices, and then of course transit oriented. So we do have about 4 key sites or catalytic sites, which we think are prime for transit oriented development. So the character recommendations essentially focus on intersection improvements, improving ped bike infrastructure, enhancing overall connectivity. Again, I mentioned public realm. We're also looking at placemaking opportunities. Again, knowing that how that is so important, right? The experience, and the more comfortable you can make it for a pedestrian, there's more likelihood that people are going to use and get out and connect and use the transit. And then of course, sustainable practices. So while I'm not going to talk about all of the character zones, I thought with the parks expertise and interest, I wanted to touch a little bit on the parks character zone, which, again, edges on the Dix Park area. Here, the focus has been looking at how we can look at connectivity in and around the Dix campus, but also looking at connectivity across the Pullen Park. Improving access from not only the corridor, but surrounding areas into the park, into the Dix Park area, and then overall enhancing multimodal connections, so making it better and safe for pedestrians and bicyclists. So that was kind of the driving goals or interest that we had when we looked at this character zone. This is an example of of how we've handled some of the concepts. So this, what you see on the image is an illustration of the intersection of the BRT station right at South Saunders and Western Boulevard. And then, as we know, this there is a lot going on south of downtown. And with all the private redevelopment that's happening, and also knowing that the Lake Wheeler has a streetscape planning process coming up, knowing that Lake Wheeler is going to be one of the major gateways or entryway into the Dix Park, we think that this BRT stop would have much more importance and significance, but however, we understand it's also going to be challenging given the grade change and the level differences. So we know that a stop here would be challenging by design, and we'll look at the details. We know that we might be a vertical, elevators taking 480 access, but we looked at opportunities right around with existing right of way. And what you see is a concept or design concept showing how perhaps we can use that existing right of way, unused right of way, and put some kind of a pedestrian entryway with stairwells and creating more of a pedestrian plaza that can be much more welcoming and probably announce the entry and into the Dix Park as well as the BRT corridor, creating bike racks and making the streetscape a little better, looking at ways to add artwork and lighting under that bridge so that you could find a better way to enhance and again the experience of the pedestrians and bicyclists. So on the left is what you see, what is existing now, and then the rendering shows how you could potentially transform that. So this is just one example of ways we have shown how that public realm can be enhanced. This is just another example again in front of the park area. This is Boylan Avenue intersection. We know how it's currently the crossings are all offset. So we're making recommendations to perhaps normalize that and make it a little more safer for crossing. There is an existing city lot where the entryway signage is. That's the little green area that you see on the graphic here. what we are recommending is to transform that area into more of a GSI, integrate some GSI function, put some better landscaping in, and kind of highlight and enhance that entryway as a way, because right now what you have there is just some shrubbery that's overgrown, and you can't really see that space behind that what exists there. So this is just illustration of that. We also talk about how we could integrate some additional ped bike connections. That is just an example again of what we tried to recommend. Then further up, again, closer to the Dix Park frontage, is closer to the railroad bridge. You see there is an existing right-of-way of space. And we think that because of the way that future BRT may have multimodal connections, we think that this could be an important junction for where pedestrians and bicyclists could come and meet, and before they merge onto Western. And so we think there's an opportunity perhaps to make that into a little pocket park, or just a little plaza area, something more welcoming, so that you have access not only connecting the neighborhood, but also from Western into that point. So that's just a concept, an illustration of that. And we show examples of how there's some other cities where, again, looking at ways you can just make that a little more of a pedestrian oriented plaza or space. This is one where we thought we had some, again, we worked closely with the parks team. You're looking at Ash Avenue and Pullen Road intersections. And one of the concepts here is that we are proposing to realign Ash Avenue to one alignment that you see on the eastern side. And in the process, we have the opportunity to perhaps expand the Pullen Park and find ways to, make a linear park strip and open up opportunities to acquire the existing gas station. And if so, we could daylight the Rocky Branch Creek right there. And perhaps even explore an option to connect the Greenway under Western into the Dix Park. And again, this is just a concept. We have not tested the feasibility, but we wanted to put it in there. And we're working with the transit team to see if a feasibility analysis can be done for this concept. And likewise, moving for the west, we have the Pullen Road, which is again a critical intersection. There's a lot of pedestrian bicycle traffic already that uses to connect between the two campuses. And with the BRT coming forward, we think that's again going to be a critical intersection. So we're looking at possible redesign. And the Pullen Bridge replacement is up, and NCDOT has that in a year's time frame to replace the bridge. And we thought that might be an opportunity. So we wanted to coordinate it. We have been having conversations with NCDOT to see if there's a potential opportunity for redesign. So you can actually make it much more safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, and maybe, with kind of condense the interchange and keeping all Western traffic under the bridge, and perhaps open up the connections and make it much more safer for pedestrians to cross over. And this is just an illustration of that potential improvement, maybe, looking at, possible improvements, green, and also separated bikeways, wider sidewalks, and more art and signage, lighting, just makes it a much more, comfortable environment. All of this linking public realm that's left over can be made better. This is a section, it's coming out of the Dix Edge area, but if you remember on the map, I've mentioned the new extension, the Western Boulevard extension that does not exist today. There is a lot of streams, and it's an ecologically sensitive area. So one of the concepts we have here is a huge opportunity to perhaps think about a concept called green TOD. Green TOD is more commonly used in the European context, but it's starting to pick up pace here in the United States, and we think it's an opportunity to perhaps pilot that concept. And what it is really, I guess it's merging the traditional walkable higher density aspect of the traditional TOD with that of an environmental sensitive approach. So looking at ways you can balance and take a sustainable approach. So you could not, so not only looking at ways you can be applying green infrastructure, but looking at ways of providing interconnected green spaces, providing for multimodal usage. So, accommodating pedestrians, bicyclists, providing for, enhanced access to not just for vehicles and transit, but also looking at pedestrians and bicyclists, looking at ways you could possibly also be integrating for habitat connectivity and looking at waste management. So there are several layers of that. So we are recommending that we do additional analysis and look at opportunities for integrating green approaches to both the design of the new BRT as well as tailoring that for future growth that may happen around the transit opportunities in this area. So that's a little of that. This is just an example of some of that, showing how Portland's integrated some of the Green Street concept. On the left, you have Seattle, again, looking at efficient green buildings. So these are just concepts, again, that we hope could get some traction as we look at these areas more at the station area planning process. So with that, quick, so we have each of those zones having, specific look at opportunities, and then we come back to a more corridor-wide recommendations. So at a corridor-wide level, again, we are proposing new street connections, keeping in mind the need for making sure the corridor can be well connected to the surrounding areas. We do have make a ton of recommendations for enhanced bicycle connectivity. What you see here in the green dashes, those are new Greenway Trail, Greenway Corridor connections that, again, we worked closely with the Greenway's team to make some of those recommendations. And then we're looking also at area-specific guidance. These are, opportunities where, as future redevelopment happens, we want to see some of these even microscopic connections, with the neighborhoods to fill those connectivity gaps. And again, you can see some of the green areas. Those are Greenway Trails. We're looking at parks, a small park opportunity next to Powell Drive. And we also highlight, I think I talked a lot about how we want to promote sustainable design practices, a map that shows environmental, ecologically sensitive areas. So again, Western does traverse many streams and ecologically sensitive areas. So we have highlighted those areas, especially where we want to promote some of those green practices. We also look at the map, also shows some GS opportunities for green stormwater installations. So that's what this map does. So that's a quick high level overview of what the study tried to accomplish and what we are in the process. Again, we finished with the public comment review. We got a lot of great comments. Folks are generally excited and looking forward to seeing some of this happen quicker. We are planning again to take the report and as well as comprehensive plan amendments. So some of these street connections, greenway connections, all of those we hope we can get adopted into the comprehensive plan. And quick note about what is ongoing. So I mentioned the BRT design is ongoing, but there's also a TOD text change, which is the zoning overlay that is under works and that's being reviewed, I think, by the Planning Commission. And so beyond this process, what will happen and what can be expected for Western? So while the BRT design process is ongoing, we think that once the text change is adopted, we are looking at applying the TOD zoning overlay on this corridor. And then, of course, with the station area planning coming up, there will be a lot more discussions around specific station nodes, looking at land use, looking at connectivity at a greater detail. So that's just a gist of that's all I have. I wanted to turn it over to see if you all have questions, and I can stop sharing.
Great, thank you so much for that really in-depth report and overview. Marcia, I see you have your hand up. You have a question?
I am so impressed. It's exciting. I'd like to suggest, I didn't see many renderings that showed trees. The idea of wanting people to walk more in the South on a global warming planet, we need to have more shade, and that can be green shade, and as well as shade structures. So in that plaza that was picture showed, it looked like it would be a mighty hot place to sit and wait for the bus. So I really encourage trees and more trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, absolutely. We hear you.
I'm curious about the park you mentioned as a potential Powell and Barstow. Is that something that the city currently owns, and is
Yes.
it in the park system already?
So the city owns, and I think Lisa, if you or someone from Parks could probably talk a little more, but I know that we own that right now, and it's been or at least being programmed or being talked about, designed for a neighborhood park. So we just thought that we wanted to encourage and make that recommendation. One thing we were told early on when we engaged the parks planning group is that that is the area where they are, it's one of the high priority park search areas where there's limited opportunities currently. And so they are looking to integrate more of parks and open space in that corridor. So we thought that was really exciting for us, which is why we took the liberty to recommend the New Street extension could look at ways you can encourage linear parks and really create that interconnected link for open spaces. So yes, I am.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm impressed with the amount of detail that was thought through, and all of the different departments that were brought together for this report. Well done. Any other comments from the board? Just make sure there's nothing up here. All right, I don't see any hands up. Thank you so much for the presentation and for keeping us in the loop.
Thank you to everyone. Thanks for the opportunity as well.
Absolutely. Next, we have a presentation on the Pullen to Bain waterline project that is going through Dix Park.
That place to sleep.
Hey all, my name's Eileen Navarrete. I'm the engineering manager for Raleigh Water, and I also have Dennis Lassiter with me, who is coincidentally showing up as Eileen Navarrete because something got messed up with his link, so I sent him mine. So even though we look alike, and we're not the same person. So we are, Dennis is the project manager for this project, and we're here just to give you all some information about a really important waterline project that's going to go through Dix Park. This, the presentation I've got is a slightly different version of a presentation we gave to City Council several weeks ago. So for some of you, if you happen to see that meeting, some of this may look familiar. All right, let me see if I can share my screen. Can you all see that?
We sure can.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for having us this evening. I'll try to be fairly brief to be respectful of all of your time. As I said, my name is Eileen Navarrete, and Dennis Lassiter is with me this evening. We're just going to talk about this waterline project that is going through Dix Park. We'll run through the need and the routing analysis, where we've ultimately decided to put the pipe, some of the cost estimates, impacts, timelines, as well as our communication plan. Before I get started, I guess I should mention that we've been working really closely with Kate Pierce and her team for what, Dennis, probably 2.5 years at this point. So this has really been a collaborative effort. Okay, so this project was first identified in the 2016 Water System Master Plan. In Raleigh Water, we have master plans for all of the components of our system. So water distribution, sewer collection, treatment on the water side, treatment on the sewer side, et cetera. And what we learned during that master planning effort, looking out at kind of a model of our existing system and looking out at our needs 20 to 30 years in the future, we realized we had some issues with capacity and redundancy in what we call the 595 pressure zone. So the 595 pressure zone is the western part of Raleigh. And it would include things like parts of NC State, Carter Finley Stadium, PNC Arena, Rex Hospital. So some pretty large, and of course, Rex Hospital being a really critical customer of ours. So we knew from the master plan that we needed to get water from the old Bain water treatment plant, which is just off South Saunders Street, up to the existing Poland Park pump station to bring water coming from our water plant in Garner out to the western side of the service area. And we determined that the best way to do that was with a 36-inch water line. Don't worry, that's not the route of the pipe, I promise. So this is sort of oversimplifying the process, the preliminary engineering process, but we really focused on three main alternatives for the new pipe. Two of them were outside of Dix Park and one of them was inside Dix Park. So can you all see my cursor or no on the screen? It's down at the bottom right now.
No.
Yes. Looks like some of you are nodding. It's down in the bottom right now.
Oh, there I go. I see it. Thank you.
So that the red and orange lines are the two options that were we looked at that were more outside Dix Park, and then the blue line was the option inside Dix Park. And so Poland Park Pump Station is here at the very top of the screen, and of course there's a section of the pipe that is in neighborhoods and not through Dix Park. But focusing on this area, the benefits of going through the park were in a lot of ways that this was quite a bit shorter and quite a bit less expensive, to the tune of $4 to $5 million less expensive than going up and around on Centennial Parkway. So ultimately, after working with park staff and their team, we did select a route to go through the park. And then we really needed to work with the staff to decide where through the park we could go while minimizing temporary and permanent impacts. We know how important this park is to the city as a whole. So the recommended route actually has some benefits to the park. It does bring public water infrastructure to the park's front door and really inside the park. It should help address some existing pressure and fire flow issues that are there with the old system that's been in place for a very long time. We're incorporating some strategic tapping locations as part of our project. So that means we're working with staff to identify locations where, as the park develops, it would make sense to tap onto public water and bring the network further. And so when Raleigh Water comes in and we install our line, we'll install some of those valves and stub outs with our project. And so there's benefits for us because it means a contractor is less likely to damage our highly critical infrastructure, but it also it kind of provides a starting point for the water infrastructure inside the park. Because we're bringing water into the park and to the park's front door, it will result probably in some significant cost savings for parks for dealing with installing their utilities inside the park. And the other benefit that this project is going to bring is we're going to install at the same time a public reclaimed water pipe. And reclaimed water is highly treated wastewater that is allowed to be used for non-human consumption purposes. So irrigation, water features, cooling towers. We have a fairly robust system for an East Coast city and serves Wake Med, serves a lot of Centennial campus on NC State's facilities. And what we've decided to do is to bring that pipe in through the park, because we're already installing a water line at the same time. You're essentially putting it in the same trench. And so it is a tiny fraction of the cost to install reclaimed water line at the same time. And so this will also give Parks and Recreation access to the reclaimed water line to use where feasible inside Dix Park. So of course there's benefits, but there's going to be some impacts as well. And our team worked really hard to minimize those impacts and to make our route work with the master plan for the park. And so the blue line that you see on the screen now is roughly the proposed route. And you can see how it kind of skirts around, it's overlaid on top of the park's master plan for Dix Park. And so you see how it kind of skirts around a lot of the features. And we did a lot of work with staff behind the scenes to really try to make that feasible. The last thing we wanted to do was, install a water line that would prohibit the development in the park, or, have to spend money twice to turn around and move a water line in, 10 years when further development occurs in, whatever area of the park. So we made sure that we were compatible with the master plan. We've also been working with park staff to discuss event coordination and coordinate our construction timelines as well. That's something else that's been really important to all of us, basically to keep our contractors out of the way when major events are happening in Dix Park. We won't be able to avoid, every single, smaller event that happens throughout the year, but we've coordinated with staff and identified the really critical events that will basically put into the contract that the contractor can't be in the way when that work is going on. And then, of course, tree removal is also really important. Trees are such an important characteristic of Raleigh and of Dix Park in particular. And we were really sensitive about, tried to be sensitive about where the pipe was going to go to minimize those impacts. So kind of honing in on the trees some more, we worked with urban forestry and had, I don't know, Dennis, how many site visits have you had out there looking at all that?
Several.
Yeah. To kind of coordinate our the impacts, to make sure that we're retaining as many trees as possible and also protecting them in the process. The trees that we are going to take down, we are going to, normally we would hire a clearing contractor, but for that just kind of goes with the utility work, but we're going to hire a separate contractor to take down some of the trees that need to be removed so that the wood can be saved and Parks and Recreation can use them so they can remain in the park for a beneficial use, whether that's, benches or picnic tables or whatever staff ultimately decides to do with them. And then of course, we'll be making repairs to the turf in the areas that we impact the park. So I assume there would probably be some questions about, okay, what does that tree removal, really look like? So I've created some slides. These were not in the council presentation to kind of hone in on what the tree impacts are. So you'll see in this picture, this shows most of the impacted areas of the park. And our alignment is shown in the blue and the red and the yellow. The area here that's shaded orange is an existing landfill. And I believe this area, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but this area that's outlined here in yellow this goes through, basically goes through that part of the landfill. Is that correct, Dennis?
Yes, it goes through a portion of it. and along the toe of the old slope of the landfill stuff, there's a large pine thicket there that's grown over part of it that's going to have to be remediated.
So both pipes, they'll go in one right next to the other, and this is where they'll go. And so this is the northern part of the park, and you can see the shaded area is the landfill. And so you see down here at the bottom, this is the area that will go through the landfill, and this is that pine thicket that I believe at some point, due to regulatory issues, because it's a landfill, I believe that pine thicket eventually would have to be cleared anyway. And we'll clear about an 80-foot wide swath through those pines that are in that area. And we've had discussions about, potentially taking advantage of the clearing and creating some walking trails and things like that through that area. Moving further to the south, near the flower cottage, this is probably the highest impact area because of the size and nature of the trees. But this photo shows the flower cottage here on the right and identifies 9 trees in this area to be removed. So they range from a 6-inch dogwood to a 20-inch oak. And we had multiple meetings on site to discuss this specific area. And this is probably the most challenging area, but you can see how the landfill kind of creeps in here, and we really need to minimize how much we're in the landfill for both the park and for the long-term viability of the infrastructure. And so we looked at all kinds of ways of, snaking through these trees, and Zach Manor and Urban Forestry was really helpful in helping us identify trees that were perhaps less healthy or less viable to kind of help guide, where we would go. We've also, you can see these red lines indicate what we call our limits of disturbance. So that's how wide an area the contractor can work in. And you can see as we go through this grove of trees near the flower cottage, we have necked that area of disturbance way down to avoid disturbing roots of the surrounding trees. So it's not ideal, but we do feel confident that we have exhausted opportunities here and found the best alternative for the infrastructure. Moving further down, this is near adjacent to Blair Drive and Barber Drive. It's where we enter the big field. And so here, this is one large oak tree that's going to come down. One of the things we weren't going to be able to avoid some sort of tree impact here. So we tried to center it in a way to minimize and only have impact to one tree as opposed to 2 or 3. And removing this tree, one of the benefits that it will provide is it will provide some ingress and egress into the big field for events going forward. So we're looking at kind of reinforcing our trench and things like that to protect the pipe under the ground to allow for large equipment and things like that to enter and leave the big field. And then finally, the area near the railroad. We cross the railroad right here, kind of in the middle of the photo, and then hang a hard right going down to Lake Wheeler Road. And there are several, you can see smaller trees along trees and even some stumps and bushes in this area that we'll have to remove. And then there is, again, similar to the big field, one large tree we've got to get from over here. So that's where we landed in the final part of the park. So of course, this is just for y'all's information. Of course, there are impacts outside the park. The entire project isn't located in the park. The project does go down Gilbert Avenue and down Maywood and then up across the South Saunders Street. And so there are some neighborhood impacts that we'll be communicating separately, but that is the other portion of the project. Looking at our costs and our timeline, we're expecting to advertise the project sometime in the fall. We pushed the schedule back a little bit from what we talked to council about several weeks ago. And that's out of a desire to pre-qualify our contractor to make sure that we feel really good about the contractor that's going to install this pipe. We'll start construction early next year. The duration is 18 to 24 months. I want to be very clear that is not 18 to 24 months inside the park. That's the entire project. And the street construction in the neighborhoods will go slower than the park because we've got small diameter water and sewer lines that we're replacing in the neighborhoods as well. We may still try to get the trees removed ahead of time by a separate contractor and do that at the end of this year. Just so we can get that done and parks can start making plans for the wood. And then that way, when our utility contractor is on board, that's their corridor is already cleared for them. So, and our project cost estimate right now is sitting around $19 million. So it's a pretty significant investment for the city. And then, of course, we're spending time with several different DIC stakeholders groups, including this team as well. We'll be talking with some of the neighborhoods in the area, NC State, the state departments that occupy space on the DIC's campus, and other neighborhoods along the project. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you all have.
Great. Thank you so much, Eileen. I appreciate that overview. I was just thinking that where you were noting that some trees might need to come down, I think in the master plan, there was actually an adventure play area in the northwest area of Dix Park, which would be a great place to accept those trees that might need to come down and be used in the playground in some way. So it's great that you're thinking about that already. Any questions from board members? I'm not seeing any on the screen. Let me double check the hands. Not seeing anything. Okay. Well, I guess it was just a really comprehensive report.
I'll take it.
Thank you. One question I do have is, this has already been presented to City Council and they have already approved it. This is just a courtesy presentation to us. Is that right?
Council doesn't approve Raleigh water projects in the midst of design. This has been presented to council for information purposes. Most likely the next time they'll see an approval will be to award the construction for the project.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and giving us that presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you all for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the evening.
Thanks. You too.
Good to see you, Eileen.
Good to see you too, Lindsay. Bye.
Next, we have a presentation by our own Scott Payne about the Biophilic City action item.
Yes, I will open it up. Martha, Marcia, did you want to start off with anything before I go into the presentation? Will I bring it up?
Yeah. I just want to thank the committee and staff for the work that's gone into this. It's a real wonderful opportunity for Raleigh to become the first city in North Carolina to have this designation, and it sets a standard for how we will grow. And I'm just, it's quite an accomplishment. It's pretty inspiring, I think, and this committee has been, I think, pretty enthused. Our meetings have been very informative, and Scott and the other people on city staff and stormwater and sustainability and some other departments have been collaborating in this as well. So thank you so much, Scott, and members of the committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will go ahead and get started. I know you all have seen a bunch of PowerPoints, so I'll try to roll through this one to get to the high points here. So Biophilic Cities, is Raleigh ready to join the Biophilic Cities Network? In September of 2019, there was a meeting at Dix Park. This was during some of the design work for Dix Park with Dr. Timothy Beatley, who represents the Biophilic Cities Network at the University of Virginia. There's a lot of excitement about the conversation that occurred at that meeting. On October 17th of 2019, this board received a presentation from, at that time, Carolyn Lindquist, who was a staff member that was championing the Biophilic Cities idea. In November 2019, City Council member, former Council member Mendel, actually placed in the work plan for both the Environmental Advisory Board and the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Board to determine if Raleigh was ready to qualify to become a biophilic city. Caroline carried that forward, made a presentation in 2020, February of 2020, to the Environmental Advisory Board, and then COVID hit and things kind of slowed down a little bit. In February of this year, the Sustainability, Urban Trees, and Wildlife, a new subcommittee of the Parks Board, reinvigorated the effort, and it was part of our Parks Board work plan. So what is biophilia? Dr. E.O. Wilson pushed forward the biophilic theory that the human species has grown up in nature. He defines it as the innately emotional affiliation of human beings to other living organisms. Innate means hereditary and hence part of our ultimate human experience. So this theory spurred a lot of research, and the research showed that engaging in nature, humans engaging in nature had all of these positive benefits: lowering depression, anxiety, increasing happiness, reducing social isolation, higher creativity. This rich body of research connecting how we as humans interact with nature has a positive effect on us. This one I found really interesting and very appropriate. The mental health benefits of going for a walk can last for 7 hours. Imagine what that was like, what was going through the pandemic, the value we had. It was the only place we could really go. How important getting out in nature. We were seeing in places 300% increase in visitation in our Greenway trails, 58% increase in our outdoor recreation sites. So people really did value being able to get out. So what are biophilic cities? They are cities that purposely, thoughtfully connect us to nature through trees and outdoor, birds and wildlife, trails and landscapes, rivers, hydrology, buildings and gardens, purposely connecting us with nature. You'll see a lot of reports coming out, a lot of public media posts about why is it so important? Why is it so important to connect with nature while you're living in a city? Again, some of those benefits that we saw from the research, you're seeing more and more of that coming up into some of our media. So there is a biophilic cities network that exists. This is just a partial list. It's growing. Edmonton, Portland, St. Louis, but it's not only just the US, it's also international. Singapore, Fremantle, Rio de Janeiro. So it's a broader thought process about these cities that see the value in planning and incorporating nature into their design. It's kind of a partner platform, this network, where you share together. You may learn from Fremantle, Australia, how they're approaching their urban forest. Someone may learn from us how we do green infrastructure. So this network builds capacity and kind of a force multiplier, learning from each other about how we design nature into our communities. There are even these city exchanges. Here's an example where San Francisco partnered with Singapore to come learn about bird safe design in their urban areas. So this network is this rich opportunity to connect with other like-minded communities about how they are integrating nature into their designs. It is not just cities, but there are also associations and agencies, international ones, that really believe in this biophilic concept. So why not a biophilic Raleigh? Well, Raleigh in 2007 endorsed the U.S. Conference of Mayors Climate Protection Agreement. In 2009, the 2030 Comp Plan was adopted by Council, including one of the key themes on Green Print Raleigh, sustainable development. In 2014, our park system was adopted, and it had a key subsystem called natural environments, how the parks provide that key subsystem. 2015, there was a new city strategic plan with a key focus area on growth and natural resources. 2015, Council endorsed a green stormwater and low impact development program. And then this current year adopted a Raleigh Community Climate Action Plan. So Raleigh has been making these steps for a number of years about recognizing the importance of integrating nature into our designs and into our life. So what does it take to join the network? It requires a narrative statement. How is your community biophilic and what the goals are for the future? You have to identify these biophilic indicators in these categories. How will you track how you are a biophilic city in natural conditions, qualities, and infrastructure? And it requires an official resolution from City Council incorporating statements supporting the goals of biophilic cities. So sustainability, wildlife, and urban trees, since we got started really in February, really picked up and moved this forward. We've contacted current biophilic cities. We reached out to them to learn about how was it for you? What did you learn from it? What's the value? We also reached out and coordinated with other City of Raleigh departments that work in this area of connecting nature to the community. Sustainability, as Marcia mentioned, engineering services, the stormwater group, planning and development, and Raleigh Water. So we developed draft biophilic indicators partnering with sustainability engineering services in our own department. And we prepared draft resolution language after looking at examples from Arlington, Austin, Texas, and Norfolk, Virginia. So what are we thinking about? How would we track if we were a biophilic city? Natural conditions, qualities, and infrastructures. Well, the mayor signed the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge. So we could track the number of registered monarch way stations. We've already started doing that. So we can track how many we're adding each year. For biophilic engagement, participation, activities, and knowledge, we can track the number of participation in our nature-based education programs, as well as those offered by sustainability and stormwater. And what's our volunteerism in this area? Why is it important for people to volunteer? We can track that information as well. We're already doing this work, so let's track it. What about biophilic institutions, planning, and governance? We can track the implementation of the City of Raleigh's Green and Stormwater Infrastructure Program, projects that incorporate sustainable green infrastructure, and we as a department are doing that in our design. And we can track human health and well-being indicators through what's the percentage of the population within Raleigh that live within a half-mile distance of a greenway or park trail. So those are indicators that we can track as a member of the biophilic cities. So the next steps from this work is in front of you today. If approved, we would target placing the resolution in front of City Council in late August, early September, depending on their schedule. We would incorporate letters of support from the Environmental Advisory Board and the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee to accompany our presentation. We have met and presented to their boards. They both have agreed to support this effort. So that's in place. So I will open it up quickly for questions. If you have any, then I will put the action item in front of you to consider. Are there any questions? I was trying to go quick.
Thanks, Scott. Great. Any questions from anybody? Let me stretch my screen so I can see y'all. Okay. I don't see any. I think one really important thing he mentioned at the end is that he presented it to the Environmental Advisory Board and to the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission. I think I got that right. And they both supported this effort as well. So it's a nice kind of combined support if we are to support it tonight. I think it's great. I've attended the meetings and I think it's a really great thing for us to go after. Scott's put a lot of effort and work into it, and so has Marcia and the committee. I think it's a great document and a great thing to go after. So if there's not any comments or questions, then I would ask if, oh, sorry, Scott, you were going to put
I
the,
see Lindsay has her hand raised.
okay, sorry. Go ahead, Lindsay.
So I think it sounds great as well. My only question is there any cost to joining the network?
So there is a very nominal cost that we budgeted, a $250 application fee. And if accepted in, we'll be in for 2 years before we renew. This question came up actually from the Environmental Advisory Board. We have the option to add or update our performance indicators. So if there's another indicator, when I know we're pursuing our own urban tree canopy study. So if we're able to complete that, we could actually incorporate that when we renew.
Very cool. Let's do it.
So I'll put the action item on the screen for people to see, and then Marcia, I believe you can lead from there.
Okay. In response to the 11/6/19 request from City Council, Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, and the Environmental Advisory Board to make a recommendation to the full council on whether Raleigh should seek to qualify as a biophilic city. The Sustainability, Wildlife, and Urban Trees Committee requests that Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board recommend to City Council that the city formally seek membership into the Biophilic Cities Network.
So that is the motion, and Carol, are you seconding that?
Yes, I'm seconding it.
Thank
I was
you.
going to make the motion, but you beat me to it. So.
Great. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Great. The motion passes.
Bravo.
And we still have a quorum. We lost a few folks that messaged me that they needed to leave, but we're still good. Great. I think that's super exciting. Thanks for doing all that work, Scott.
Well done.
I would like to commend Scott openly before all of us who are left, because he is, I wonder if he had a chance to do any of his other work. He's worked so hard on this, so I salute Scott, and I want you to know that he worked extraordinarily hard with extraordinary commitment to help us make this happen.
I thank you, Carol, for saying that. I really agree. And he did such a great job explaining things to us and keeping us informed and getting our feedback. This is really an important thing. I'm so delighted that we're unanimous about this.
Good deal. Thank you all. Well, I think we're at the end of our presentations, and we'll move into our regular business now. So next up is approval of the last meeting minutes. If y'all had time to read those, that was from June. Is there a motion to approve those or any corrections that needed to be made? I saw Carol's hand, or Dr. Love, and I saw Marcia's hand up. Was that a correction?
I would move that we accept the minutes from the last meeting. Although I haven't.
Very good. And I see Marcia seconded. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any against? No. Okay. Now, Oscar, we have the director's reports.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Good evening.
It's been a long meeting thus far. I know it's a last meeting before break, so I really do not want to take up too much time because there's still some more business to go through. So you all have my report, but I do kind of want to touch on a couple of things here. At the July 6th council meeting, there were a couple of action items, approvals from council, that items that you all had to kind of work through previously, one of them being the naming, donor recognition, and sponsorship resolution. Council passed that. I know staff had worked very hard on that, so we're very happy to see that pass unanimously through council. Also, the FY22 work plan that you all very diligently worked on over the last several months was also unanimously approved by council. So I know your plates are full. So once you all get back from August recess, it's time to get back to work. And also a presentation was given by staff about the Greenway safety report, about some of the actions and some of the initiatives that will be moving forward in collaboration with RPD about different ways that we can kind of make our greenways a little bit safer through communications, signage, RPD Greenway unit, and then also some strategic lighting and so forth. So council is also very supportive of that presentation. We're coming off of a week of a lot of great activities and events. On Tuesday, we had the ribbon cutting for the Panthers Play 60 Challenge Course and Playground out at Barwell Road Park. We had an enthusiastic crowd of approximately 300 people there that were celebrating that. And boy, was it a festive, event. A lot of great coverage, great partnership with the Carolina Panthers, and what an extraordinary park amenity for the Barwell Road Park community. So I know many of y'all were there, but if you haven't been there yet, take your running shoes, time yourself on the 40-yard dash, and let's see if you can break the record. And then also that same day, we had the last Plaza and Play public meeting out at the Greg Poole Junior All Faiths Chapel at Dix Park, and that was also very well attended. They pulled out all stops. They had a big rendering of what the park would look like when fully built out. And I believe that rendering or scale model is going to be continued to be displayed out at the chapel as well. So if you had not had a chance to see that, you still have time to see that at the chapel. Just check the Dix Park website for operating hours of the chapel, and please go definitely see it. It is a very impressive scale model. And two more things today: a partnership between Raleigh Parks, the Busey Foundation, the North Carolina Courage, and North Carolina Football Club has set up a temporary mini soccer pitch / futsal court at City Plaza in downtown Raleigh along Fayetteville Street. And that will stay up starting today all the way through August the 17th, I believe. So it's going to be open for drop-in free play. There will also be some soccer clinics and some organized league play. There will be a media day tomorrow at 3 p.m., which will kind of be the official kickoff for this temporary soccer pitch. So I encourage you all to come out to Fayetteville Street tomorrow afternoon. Check it out for yourself. I think it's going to be a great initiative to kind of really bring back a lot of people back to downtown, build some encouragement and excitement for futsal, which, by the way, Ken has been working on a partnership where we're going to be trying to get a futsal court. We're still working, it's not finalized yet, but a futsal courts at both Brentwood Park as well as Peach Road Cultural Center. So they're sharing some screenshots of the court installation today at City Plaza, as you can see there. So we're very excited. It's going to be fun for both adults and kids. So come on out, put your soccer shoes on, and let's have some fun. And then lastly, kind of some breaking news. We just learned this afternoon that the Chavis Park project, the John Chavis Memorial Park project, is going to be the recipient of the 2021 Imprint Award, which is given by Downtown Raleigh Alliance as an impressive development project in downtown Raleigh. So that, congratulations, everyone. The award will be announced at the 2021 State of Downtown program on September 9th, 2021. So if we get some additional information about that program, we will go ahead and share it with the rest of the board. So with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Great stuff. Thanks for all those updates.
A lot of great stuff happening.
Yeah, Sally, thanks for sharing the futsal setup. That looks fun. Any questions for Oscar? And he didn't read the last little bit, but we've already mentioned it. We're not meeting in August, and September, as of now, we're slated to meet in person. And I guess we're deciding if it will be the 5 Points Center or Chavis, I think are our options.
Yes, we're checking on a couple of items as far as AV capabilities and things like that. But I think we're leaning towards, bringing everybody down to John Chavis Memorial Park, so you can enjoy the new facility and enjoy the $1 million view of downtown.
Great. Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Very cool. I have 2 questions.
Yes.
So the first question I have is, I know that I think it was like the last week of June was Pollinator Week, right?
Yes.
So I was asked, do any parks maintain any form of beekeeping to support that? And so beekeeping or hives, do we have that in our parks? I didn't know the answer to that, so.
Currently, the only location that we do have kind of like an apiary type of operation or bee boxes is at the Raleigh Convention Center. We do maintain the pollinator gardens outside of the convention center, and within that pollinator garden, there is a bee house and a beehive that they have in partnership with some apiary organization. But we have yet to look into it at our park sites, but it's obviously something we can possibly explore as long as we have a partner that would be willing to kind of help, take that task on for us through a partnership.
So there's a pollinator garden downtown?
There is one right outside the Raleigh Convention Center at the main entrance, yes.
Oh, it must be really small, because I'm like,
oh no, it's a fairly extensive one.
Okay, at the end.
Yes, it's fairly large, and it's just kind of out in front of where the Sir Walter statue is at the convention center.
Near the statue. Okay, got
yes.
it. I will relay that. Thank you for that. The other question is, I've been sharing snippets from the Raleigh Parks newsletter on my social media, and someone pointed out to me, so I basically took every snippet from last week's newsletter and I have been sharing it every day. Okay. And someone asked me about the pay for the positions. So there are many positions that are being advertised and for looking for 500 summer employees. Mm-hmm. And the pay is low.
Yes, it definitely is.
It's really low. I didn't even myself click through on the link to look at it, but it is $8 to $12.25 an hour. Why are we not paying? I mean, we should be paying $15 an hour. So I just put the link in the chat for you guys to see it if you're interested. But the positions range from $8 to $12.25 an hour. Yes,
yeah, we do know that we are behind market. There is a proposed part-time pay study that HR is going to kick off this upcoming fiscal year, FY23, because there is a part-time pay issue citywide throughout our entire organization. Not only, it really impacts mostly parks primarily, but also the Raleigh Convention Center employees. So we are very hopeful that this compensation study is going to get us to where we need to be. I did want to point out, though, that staff has worked very hard to try to come up with innovative ways on how we can raise our pay rates somewhat. Our starting salary was $7.25 an hour a couple months ago. We did find some innovative ways, solutions on trying to utilize some budget savings here and there to at least raise the floor up to $8 an hour, and then also advance some other positions like 50 cents an hour. So I know it's not much, but we had the opportunity to try to do something to advance that as a bridge in the meantime until we can get to that citywide compensation study.
So when was the shift from the federal rate of 725 to 8. When did you say that shift was?
So we found monies to raise that floor from 725 to 8, and it was around mid-June.
Mid-June.
And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. Those actually went into effect around what date for our employees?
So they went into effect with the payroll that started June 29th, once we got approval to do that from administration.
Okay. And Jen, I think either Jen or Oscar had already answered my other question about our September meeting, that would be in person. So thank you for answering those. Oscar, don't mean to corner you.
No, you're welcome. They're the
saw
same
the pay
concerns
rate and I was like, also reading headlines about the cost of living is just increasingly going up.
Yes.
So I was like, that's a concern, especially when I'm trying to help promote the initiatives, and then I'm getting some feedback. And I was like, okay, that's a fair point.
Yes,
So,
very, very valid concerns that our department administration share with you, but we are very fortunate to know that it is in the books to have that studied extensively and hopefully implemented this next fiscal year.
good to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great questions. Christina, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just had a clarifying question of what you just spoke of. Does that mean that everyone who had been making 725 prior to June 29th was bumped up, or was it just for new employees bumped up afterwards? I just want to clarify.
Everybody who was at 725 was bumped up to 8.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Oscar before we move on to committee reports? Okay.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you. So Christina, Parks Committee, I don't think you've met yet, right?
I start in September. So the Parks Committee meeting for this last month was canceled, but I have been in touch with Sally. And over the next 2 months, we are going to get together and have a plan for September's meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Well, let's see, Lindsay. So you're now taking over for Fred Fletcher Volunteer Committee. Great. I didn't realize that. Okay. Thanks for volunteering for that. Charlie, when are you rolling off? Soon, right?
I think September will be my last meeting. Either
Okay.
September, October.
You'll be at the meeting. Good. Okay. All right. I assume we don't have any report there. Okay. Greenways Committee, Beverly had to roll off already. She is leaving. For those of you who don't know, she in the morning is driving up to Dulles and is flying out to France to do a bike tour on her bicycle. She's taking her bike with her. So
wow,
impressive. I know. So she had to get going. But I don't think there was any committee meeting anyway, anything to report there. Sustainability, Wildlife, and Urban Trees Committee, Marcia.
Well, we have continued to meet. We will meet this coming Monday at 4 o'clock. And if you've heard something that tonight interests you in serving on the committee, let us know. We'll make sure you get the link.
Great, thank you.
There's the report is the work that we've been doing, and we've been learning a lot about how our parks are maintained for sustainability. But I think we spoke about the program for invasive species, burning things, and anyway, it's an exciting committee, and please join us if you're interested.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Devereaux Meadow Park, is there any report on that from the folks who are liaisons? Is Christina and Charlie? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Was that? I have been on some meetings with neighborhoods, CACs, that Devereaux Meadow continues to meet with us and really explain what they're doing. So I really love the outreach that they're doing, but I haven't met with them individually. I'm not sure if Charlie has, but other than that May meeting, I just continue to see them constantly at different meetings that I'm at. So I appreciate their work with community outreach.
Don't think there's another stakeholder committee meeting until either late August or September.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the update. Committee reports, liaison, representatives, Arts Commission. Carol, do you have any report?
No, because there hasn't been an Arts Commission meeting since our last board meeting.
Okay, very good. BPAC, any report from Christina on bicycle and ped?
I went to their last meeting and there wasn't much for us. I'll continue going and I'll update you when I have something. Thanks a lot.
That's good, thanks. Sally, any report from Historic Cemeteries?
Yeah, I'll be quick. The Historic Cemeteries Advisory Board remains a standalone board, as you may know at this point. Council approved amending the bylaws to reduce their membership from 9 to 7. They are, the remaining members are passionate and they're ready to make progress on their fiscal year 22 work plan and plan to come to the City Council meeting on August 17th to present that to City Council. Caleb Smith is the current new chair who was elected at our last meeting, and he's going to present that to City Council. Let me know if you have any questions.
Great, thanks for that.
Oh, they are actively recruiting members. So if you know of anyone who's interested, please pass them along.
How many members do they have currently?
They have 4 active members, so we're looking 3.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Very good. Next is the Dix Leadership Committee. That meeting was June 22nd. It always seems very far away because we meet right after this meeting, the week after, I think, or very shortly after. So a lot of what we saw was already unveiled at the meeting the other night, as far as developments in the design of the plaza and play. If you weren't able to make it out to one of those sessions on, I think it was Tuesday evening, take a look at the website. It's a really cool model. It was, really large, as they like to do, and fun to kind of get down and look at the details. I think Dave Toms was there with his group, because they're working on that with MVA. So it's coming along really nicely. It's looking really great.
Dr. Lev and I were there.
Oh, good.
And Marcia.
And I saw Marcia, and yeah.
Dr. Love.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was really amazing.
Yeah. So let's see, they're going to be advancing the building study around the plaza and play to start studying the relationships with potential leasers. So that is good. We had a presentation on Lake Wheeler Road from city transportation staff, and the improvements that they're looking at doing there. The council did pass a budget amendment to allocate $1.5 million for the design of Lake Wheeler Road. So that should cover the upgrades that are needed there. The Stephen Bentley gave the presentation that we had already seen on the naming rights updates, and it was unanimously approved by the leadership committee because, if you remember, a portion of that was saying anything in Dix, the leadership committee would essentially review rather than the Parks Board. So they approved that. And then, as Oscar mentioned, it went to council and for their approval. That was it. Those are the highlights. Any questions on any of that? The next report is from the Historic Resources and Museums Advisory Board, which was also a while ago. I think it was June 24th. Sorry. Okay. And a few highlights that are maybe still relevant. A lot of the activities already happened, came and went, but the trolley tours at Mordecai have been hugely popular, and there's been a lot of really neat specific tours that have been selling out. So they had a Jewish history trolley tour that they've done a few times now, and it sold out in May. They had an LGBTQ trolley tour that also sold out in June. They had a food trolley tour that's happening in August. So if you're interested in that, you can still get a ticket for that. They're hopeful their traditional in-person events will be able to resume in the fall at Mordecai. At Moore Square, they are having the Moore Square Market on Sundays, 11 to 3. And let's see, that's May 2nd through October 3rd. And they're doing the Raleigh trolley tours there on Sundays in June. So maybe that's done. I don't know. That might be done. The Raleigh Night Market occurs every 4th Thursday. So a lot of good stuff going on. As I believe you know, the Chavis Carousel has not been running ever since the opening day because of a technical difficulty. So they're still waiting on that part, last I heard. And the Friends of the City of Raleigh Museum received a $10,000 grant from the A.J. Fletcher Association, which is great. That's my report for that. Next, we have a new committee that's the brief committee we have to do every year, which is asking someone to be the head of the nomination committee. This is for us to do our vote for a chair and vice chair. So we've already been through a year, and I am eligible and would be willing to serve again as chair. And I believe Beverly would also be willing to serve as vice chair. But the nominating committee person would take any nominations of any other individuals. You can nominate yourself or others. And then the vote would happen in September. So is there anyone that would be willing to be the nominating committee chair, I guess is, and it basically lasts. Designee, okay. It would last until September. Essentially, you just take people's emails. Yeah.
I'll do it.
Thanks, Charlie. All right.
One final committee position, right?
Go out with a bang. All right. Much appreciated. So if anyone has any nominations, please send them to Charlie. Great. Chair report, anything that wasn't mentioned already. The Barwell Road playground and champion course that Oscar mentioned is really pretty neat. Looks nice and slick, and you should get out there. If you have any kids or grandkids, take them out there to challenge them on the course. A lot of park staff were out there running the 40-yard dash and doing a pretty good job. I went on a walk through the sunflowers today at Dick's, and they're getting ready to pop. So I'd say in the next week, they're going to be looking really good. They're already, some of them are already starting to come up and look pretty great. So be sure to get out there in the next week or two. I think that's all I've got. Like we mentioned, we'll take August off. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? This is the moment for roundtable. Dr. Love, yes.
I hope my computer is working because it gave me a notice that the internet is not secure. So I want to commend the staff on all the events that have been happening. I was out at Boulevard Road, certainly you saw the change thing. I also want to mention that there's an article in Walter about the John Chavis Memorial Park. I haven't seen it yet. Residents here have been telling me about it. Laura's supposed to mail a copy to me. So if you have an opportunity, check that out. I go by Chavis at least twice a week, kind of checking things out. Sometimes I actually get out of the car and walk around. And I was there today, and there was an awful lot of activity going on out on the playgrounds. There were a group of seniors inside playing. There were camp kids and daycare kids all over the place. Really fantastic. I'm so excited about that. There are two things I want to bring up. There's no telephone in the office upstairs. And I think that's a kind of a safety issue. If something was going on upstairs and the staff person needed to make a call, there's no telephone in that office. Also, I would recommend a cut in the glass, because if somebody wants to communicate with the person in the office, there's this giant glass there, but there's no opening so that they can communicate without somebody going into the office. One of the parents mentioned something to me, the wall where the ramp is. And I look down, the little ones get off the water pad and they go climb on the wall. I think there needs to be an obstruction placed there so that they are, because they have no idea how high the wall is down at the other end. It's ground level or even with the other area, but everything is really fantastic. Everybody seems to be having a great time at the park. And so I commend the staff for what's happening there. And then we have some part-time staffers and some permanent staffers, but it's coming along, and the nighttime cleanup, perhaps. I don't know what, there are custodians there, I guess, during the day, but the place is open until 9 at night, right? So is there a staff that cleans up after the night? So when the crew comes in the morning, the place is clean? That was a question that I had.
I'm gonna have to kind of defer over to Ken for that to kind of maybe talk in a little bit more detail about it. We do currently have a custodian vacancy there, so we are actively in the process of recruiting, but I think we are leveraging potentially staff from other sites along with a custodial contract as well.
Dr. Love, so we're working on two things. It's a partnership between myself and Sally's group. So we have, I'll respond to Oscar's first one. We do have a vacancy in our full-time custodian, which we are actively recruiting, but we've redirected our custodian that managed our administrative space at Wade Avenue to kind of sub in until we get that filled. So we use that. We use part-time staff to come out. We're working on hiring for what we're calling a caretaker role, much like we've done it places like Pullen Park, to support the work that parks can't do on a regular basis. So as we get operational, we're trying to really kind of get our head and arms around all of the responsibilities that come with it. So right now it's kind of a team effort on how to make sure we're accommodating this new and really exciting space. But our long-term plan is to have our full-time custodian in place that will have responsibilities inside, outside, and including the new renovated carousel house. When that time is used up, we will have a part-time caretaker role that will support it, and then working directly with Sally's team, who had an additional full-time resource that was approved as part of this year's budget, but we're still dealing with the hiring freeze for all of our full-time positions, as well as the challenges with hiring part-time staff.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I guess I have another question. Since the facility is open until I think 9 at night, and you have the people in and out, then who would take care of cleaning up after that 9 o'clock so that when the people come in, the facility is clean?
That's our custodian. They typically start before the building opens. So our custodians usually come in at 6. Summer is really challenging because we're welcoming campers at 7:30 in the morning. So their work is really cut out for them. So our rec leaders, which is our part-time staff, when they close, they have a general role of emptying trash cans, that type of stuff. Our custodial staff or our contractual cleaning staff will come in before the facility opens to prepare us for that next day of operations.
Good. I just want to make sure that it stays clean and healthy. So thank you.
Amen. It's a big old facility to keep clean. Plus, we have really exciting outdoors that's added to it as well. But yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Anything else to add? Seeing none, and we have finished our agenda, I declare the meeting adjourned.
Yes. Good job.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a great night.
Have a great summer.